I handed my husband the divorce papers inside a congratulations card, and the look of pure terror on his face was worth every penny of the mortgage I just drained. My name is Elena, and 3 weeks ago, I was just a stuck single mom trying to figure out why my husband, Mark, was working 60-hour weeks while our bank account remained bone dry. I thought we were struggling. I thought we were a team fighting to keep our daughter Lily in a good school. But then I found the keys to the house I didn't know we owned and the nursery he'd built for a child that wasn't mine. Is it a crime to destroy a man's reputation if he's been building a second life on your daughter's college fund? Some might call it bitter. I call it an audit. It started with a dry cleaning receipt, a tiny slip of paper that should have meant nothing. Mark is a man of habit. He's the kind of man who remembers every anniversary, every doctor's appointment, and never misses a bedtime story. That's how he hides it. He uses the perfect dad persona as a cloak, a shield that makes it impossible to suspect him of anything darker than forgetting to take out the trash. We had been married for 8 years. 8 years of building a life that I thought was solid. But lately, the math wasn't adding up. Mark was a senior architect, or so he said. He was bringing home a paycheck that barely covered our rent and Lily's preschool, claiming that the firm was restructuring and everyone was taking a hit. I believed him. I worked extra shifts at the clinic, coming home with aching feet and a tired heart, all because I thought we were sacrificing together. I found the dictionary in his car while I was vacuuming out the crumbs from Lily's snacks. It was an old leather-bound thing that sat in the side pocket of the trunk. When I picked it up, the weight was wrong. It shifted in my hand. I opened it, expecting to find yellowed pages, but instead, I found a void. A rectangular hole had been carved into the paper. Inside sat that silver key and a folded piece of paper. My voice tightens just thinking about that moment. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I just stood there in the driveway, the sun beating down on my neck, holding a piece of evidence that my husband was a stranger. The paper was a utility bill for an address in Oak Ridge, a neighborhood 40 minutes away, a neighborhood we couldn't afford. That night, when Mark came home, I watched him. I watched the way he kissed Lily on the forehead. I watched the way he complained about his long day at the office. I realized then that I wasn't just married to a liar, I was married to a performer. I waited until Tuesday. Mark told me he had a late-night budget meeting that would likely run until midnight. I didn't argue. I packed Lily a bag and dropped her off at my sister's house, telling her I just needed a night to sleep. But I wasn't sleeping. I was hunting. I followed his silver sedan from a distance, 3 cars back. My heart was a drum in my chest, every beat echoing the word, why? He didn't go to his office downtown. He headed north. He drove to a quiet cul-de-sac lined with expensive craftsman homes. He pulled into the driveway of a blue house with white trim. It looked like a dream. It looked like the house we used to talk about building one day. I watched from the shadows of the street as he got out of the car. He didn't look like a man at a budget meeting. He looked happy. He reached into the back seat and pulled out a stroller, a brand new, high-end model that cost more than our monthly groceries. He pushed it toward the front door, using his own key to enter. I sat in my car for 3 hours. The silence was a physical weight. Standing there in that dark rental car, the smell of cold coffee and my own sweat felt like a prison. I waited until Mark's car pulled out of that driveway at 11:30 p.m. I waited another 10 minutes just to be sure. Then I walked up that driveway. My legs felt like lead. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the silver key I'd stolen from his dictionary. It slid into the lock perfectly. The door opened with a quiet, expensive click. The house smelled of fresh paint and lavender. It wasn't a bachelor pad. It wasn't a place for a quick fling. It was a home. There were photos on the mantle, not of me and Lily, but of Mark and a woman I didn't recognize. She was younger, blonde and very pregnant in the pictures. They were laughing on a beach. In another, he was kissing her belly. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to lean against the wall. I wandered through the rooms like a ghost. Everything was new. The furniture was designer. The kitchen was stocked with organic snacks. He was funding a luxury lifestyle for this woman while I was clipping coupons for diapers. Then I reached the room at the end of the hall. The door was painted a soft duck egg blue. I pushed it open and the breath left my lungs. It was a nursery. But it wasn't just any nursery, it was a masterpiece. The crib was solid oak, hand-carved. There were plush toys that cost more than Lily's entire toy box. I opened the dresser drawers, rows and rows of designer baby clothes, neatly folded. He wasn't just having an affair, he wasn't just cheating, he was replacing us. He was building a version 2.0 of his life, using the money he had told me didn't exist. He had taken out business loans in our joint names. I found the paperwork in the desk in the home office. He had saddled me with debt to build a nest for someone else. I stood in the center of that perfect blue room and realized that the man I loved had never really existed. He was a shadow. I looked at the fox on the mural, the one with his eyes, and I felt a cold, hard stone form in my stomach. I realized that if I walked out now and confronted him, he would find a way to spin it. He would call me crazy. He would hide the assets. I sat on the floor of that perfect blue room, surrounded by the smell of new wood and betrayal. I didn't cry. I took out my phone. I didn't call him. I started taking pictures. Every drawer, every receipt, every business document in that desk. I was no longer a wife. I was a private investigator on the trail of my own murder, the murder of my marriage. I realized then that Mark had a plan to leave us. He was just waiting for the new baby to arrive. He was going to walk away and leave me with the debt and the questions. Not this time, Mark. I whispered into the empty, perfect room. This time, you're the one who loses everything. The drive home was a blur of red lights and the cold realization that my entire life had been a carefully constructed lie. I arrived home just before Mark. I sat in the darkness of our living room, the room with the sagging couch and the leaky window we couldn't afford to fix, and I listened to the sound of his key in the lock. For years, that sound had brought me peace. Now, it sounded like a cell door sliding shut. "Elena, why are you sitting in the dark, honey?" His voice was smooth, concerned. He reached for the light switch. I blinked as the overhead bulb hissed to life. I looked at him, really looked at him. He was wearing the same blue button-down he'd worn to our daughter's 3rd birthday. He looked like the man I'd loved for a decade. "Just a headache, Mark," I lied. The words tasted like ash. "How was the budget meeting?" "Tedious," he sighed, dropping his briefcase, "but necessary. If we want that bonus by the end of the year, I have to put in the hours. I'm doing this for us, Elle, for Lily's future." I watched him walk into the kitchen to pour a glass of water. A part of me wanted to scream. I wanted to lunge at him, to show him the photos of the duck egg blue nursery and the woman with the pregnant belly. But I realized that if I did that now, he would win. He was an architect. He was trained to build structures, and he was trained to dismantle them. If I confronted him without a cage to trap him in, he would find a way to make me look like the unstable wife in front of a judge. The next night, the risk almost cost me everything. Mark had forgotten his phone charger in the office, the real office, downstairs in our basement. I was sitting at his desk, my fingers flying across the keys as I tried to bypass the password on his external hard drive. I had the ledger open next to me, my pen shaking as I circled the forged signatures that would eventually send him to court. Suddenly, I heard the floorboard creak in the hallway upstairs. My breath hitched. I hadn't heard the car pull into the driveway. I had exactly 6 seconds before he walked through that door. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. I shoved the ledger under the seat cushion of the armchair and slammed the laptop shut just as the handle turned. "Working late, Elle?" he asked, his shadow stretching across the desk. He stood in the doorway, his silhouette blocking the light from the hall. He looked suspicious, his eyes narrowed as they darted to the closed laptop. "Just looking for some old photos of Lily," I lied, my voice tight. I forced a smile, though my skin felt like it was crawling. I missed her being that small. I was looking for that folder from our trip to the lake. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, his hand still on the doorknob. I wondered if this was it, if he'd seen the bank alerts I'd been trying to intercept on my phone, if the fox with his green eyes had somehow warned him that his prey was no longer sleeping. But then he just nodded, grabbed his charger from the side table, and left. I sat in the dark for 20 minutes after that, waiting for my hands to stop shaking. I wasn't just fighting for money anymore. I was fighting for my life. 2 days later, I decided I needed to see her. I needed to see the woman who was living in the ghost of my marriage. I drove to a small park near the Oak Ridge house. I saw them together, Mark and Chloe. They were sitting on a bench, and he was rubbing her back with the same tenderness he used to reserve for me. But then I saw it. Around her neck was a gold locket. It was my grandmother's locket. Mark had told me 2 years ago that it had been lost during our move. He'd even helped me look for it, acting just as devastated as I was. Seeing it on her neck, resting against her maternity shirt, was a different kind of pain. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a total erasure of my history. He was stripping my life of its value to decorate hers. I spent the rest of the week with a forensic accountant, a woman who didn't care about family values, only about numbers. She's been funneling nearly 40% of his salary into a shell company, she told me, her eyes fixed on the screen. And these loans, Elena, he didn't just take them out, he used your personal credit as the primary collateral. If that house in Oak Ridge goes into foreclosure, you're the one the bank comes for, not him. The betrayal had layers I hadn't even imagined. He wasn't just replacing me, he was setting me up to be the fall girl for his new life. He wanted to walk away clean while I drowned in the debt of his secret nursery. I realized then that a simple divorce wasn't enough. I needed to burn the bridge while he was still standing on it. I began moving our joint savings, the little that was left, into a private trust for Lily that his name could never touch. I gathered every forged document, every photo of the secret house, and every receipt for the oak crib. I wasn't just building a case, I was building a guillotine. The morning of the congratulations party felt like the coldest day of my life, despite the thick, humid summer heat. The air in the house was thick with the scent of lilies and floor wax. I spent all morning preparing, not because I wanted the party to be perfect, but because I needed the stage to be set. Every chair was placed with intention. Every guest was invited for a reason. I was a director, and this was my final scene. I told Mark his mother wanted to throw a surprise success party for him at our house to celebrate the end of his big project. He was hesitant at first, his eyes darting toward the door as if he had another budget meeting he was missing, but his ego was his greatest weakness. He couldn't resist the idea of being the center of attention, the gold star son, the provider everyone looked up to. By 6 p.m., the living room was full. His parents, Martha and Arthur, were there, beaming with a pride that made my stomach churn. His sister, Sarah, was sipping wine, leaning against the counter and telling me how lucky I was to have a man who worked 60 hours a week just to give us a comfortable life. "He's a rare breed, Elena," Sarah said, touching my arm. "Most men would have cracked under that kind of pressure, but Mark, he just keeps building." I smiled, though it felt like my face was made of glass. "He certainly does, Sarah. He builds things most people can't even imagine." Mark walked in at 6:30, looking tired and triumphant. "Surprise!" everyone shouted. He played the part perfectly. He feigned shock, his hands going to his chest as he laughed. He hugged me, kissed my cheek, and told everyone he couldn't have done it without his supportive, patient wife.
It was the most disgusting performance I had ever witnessed. I waited until the cake was served. I waited until the room was quiet, everyone holding a fork, their eyes on the man of the hour. "I actually have a surprise for you too, Mark," I said, my voice cutting through the chatter like a knife. I stood in the center of the room, the envelope tucked under my arm. "Oh, another tie, Elle?" he joked, and the room erupted in easy laughter. He looked so comfortable, so safe. "No," I said, stepping closer until I was inches from him. "It's a gift for the new house, the Craftsman in Oak Ridge, the one with the duck-egg blue nursery and the fox mural." The laughter didn't just stop, it evaporated. I watched the blood drain from Mark's face in real time. It started at his hairline and moved down to his throat until he looked like a marble statue in a museum. "Elena, I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. His voice was thin, a thread ready to snap. "I think you do, and I think Chloe would be interested to know that your dead wife is actually standing right here, serving chocolate cake to your mother." I didn't hand the photos to him. I handed the first one, a shot of him kissing Chloe's belly, to his mother. I handed the second one, the photo of the Oak Ridge deed with my forged signature, to his father. "He's been using Lily's college fund and my personal credit to build a second life," I told the room. My voice was steady, cold, and loud enough for the neighbors to hear. He forged my name on 3 different loans. He was waiting for Chloe's baby to be born before he disappeared and left us with the debt. Mark lunged for the photos, his perfect dad mask finally shattering into 1,000 jagged pieces. "You're crazy. This is all a misunderstanding. It was a long-term investment. I was going to tell you." "You were going to let me drown, Mark," I screamed, the years of suppressed pain finally breaking through. "You stole my grandmother's locket and put it on her neck. You told her I was dead. You murdered me in your stories so you could play house in a blue room while I was clipping coupons for Lily's milk." His mother started to cry, a low, mournful sound. His sister Sarah looked like she wanted to vomit. Mark looked at me with a hatred so pure it should have scared me. He stepped toward me, his voice a low hiss that only I could hear. "You think you've won? I'll tie you up in court for the next decade. You'll be broke, homeless, and Lily will grow up hating you for destroying her father." "You're wrong, Mark," I whispered back, leaning into his space. "I've already spoken to your firm. They don't take kindly to senior architects using company shell accounts for personal properties. And I've already spoken to Chloe. She's at that blue house right now, and she's already seen the photos of your very much alive family. She's done with you." I pulled out the final document. "This is a freezing order. The Oak Ridge house is flagged for fraud. Our joint accounts are empty because I moved the money into a trust Lily's name is on, and yours isn't. You don't have a second life anymore. You don't even have a first one." I walked to the front door and opened it wide. The summer air rushed in, but it felt like a winter chill. "The party's over. Martha, Arthur, I'm sorry you had to see this, but your son isn't the man you think he is. Everyone out, especially you, Mark." He tried to say something, to reach for me, but his father, Arthur, stepped in front of him. He didn't say a word. He just looked at his son with a look of such profound disappointment that Mark finally looked away. He walked out the door with nothing but the clothes on his back and the keys to a house he no longer owned. As the last car pulled away, the silence returned to the house. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of the last few weeks. It was clean. It was empty. I went upstairs to Lily's room. She hadn't woken up. She didn't know the world had shifted on its axis. She didn't know her father was a ghost. I sat on the floor by her bed, the same way I had sat on the floor of that secret nursery. But this time, I wasn't taking pictures of a crime. I was watching the only thing in my life that was real. I took a long, slow breath. The revenge didn't fix the hole in my heart. It didn't bring back the years of trust he'd stolen, but it built a fence around what was left. I wasn't just a single mom. I was the architect of my own survival, and for the first time in my life, I knew exactly who I was.